Senator Roberts, you have the call.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Pazuello, I'm not interested in the side issues of this topic. The other members have discussed slavery and exploitation. They concern me, but I'm not the least interested. Mine is a matter of accountability and a matter of arithmetic and integrity. Let's go to the figures that Senator Keneally presented through a newspaper article.
Which newspaper article are we talking about, Senator Roberts?
Sorry, it's the 8th of October, Sydney Morning Herald, written by David Crowe, Jump in Air Arrivals by Asylum Seekers.
Okay, so that's been provided. Good.
Yes, it's already been tabled. These are the figures that article provides, and I didn't see anyone from your department contest them. 2015, 8,562 people arrived as asylum seekers. That's a rate of 23 per day. 2016, it was 12,673. That's 35 per day. 2017, it was 18,267, 50 per day. That's a doubling in just 2 years. In 2018, it was 27,884, which is a rate of 76 per day, which is almost 4 times. Then in 2019, slight decrease, 24,520 asylum seekers arrived. That was a rate of 67 per day. Now, according to David Crowe, including July, from the 1st of July this year, it is a rate of about 80 per day. So I'll take you back to my question, because what I want to do is get to the core of this issue. I said in my question, is it true that currently around 80 asylum seekers per day arrive in Australia by air? If not true, what is the current daily figure? I was led to believe that it's much, much smaller. But in fact, according to David Crowe, it is 80. And this is my issue. I'm here serving the people of Queensland and Australia. You're here serving the people of Australia. My job is to hold you accountable. My job is also to help you. And for that, I need the facts. I need to be able to support you. I need the facts. David Crowe goes on to talk about the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. The government said 62,732 of the applications from July 1, 2014 to August 19 this year had been rejected, a refusal rate of 84.2%. He goes on, tens of thousands of rejected asylum seekers have taken their cases to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, which had a caseload of more than 60,000 matters at the end of September. So my question is, the rate of arrivals of asylum seekers is now 80 per day. Is that true?
No. So if you take the data as at the 31st of August as distinct from the 19th of August, which Mr Crowe relied upon, in good faith it has to be said, I think the rate is closer to 60 if I'm right.
65.
So the answer is no. I think as at the 31st of August, I don't have data unless
I'm pretty sure
can
that
assist.
to assist Senator Roberts, I'm pretty sure that after that information was provided and Mr Crowe wrote his article, didn't the department correct the record and say that it was 65 per day?
Well, I don't know that we gave a daily rate, but we said that the data was effective to the 31st of August. So
but
it changes
was the equivalent of 65.
Changes the denominator because the number of days are increased.
So the point is, it's gone in the space of 5 years. It's gone from 23 per day to 35 per day, 50% increase, to 50 per day, which is a doubling of just 2 years earlier, to 76, which is 3 heading for 4 times, now 67, then almost 80, but you've said it's 67. 67 is 3 times 23, roughly. So, you know, there's a big increase there, Mr Pazuello. And is it, Commissioner Outram told us about the many complexities of his job. I understand that. And border security and Australian sovereignty is extremely important to me and to most Australians. And
indeed,
I'm wondering if you can acknowledge that trend. And secondly, if you can make any comment about whether or not the Administrative Appeals Tribunal is perceived as by people who want to come here illegally or legally as a weak link.
Well, it's probably true to say that there's an opportunistic attitude taken on behalf of many people, thinking that if you can get a valid visa application up, because remember you have to have a valid visa to get on the plane. Once I'm in country, if I can get both either a favourable determination from the department, which is unlikely because our refusal rate's very high, but then I can slip into the AAT and or federal court proceedings, Australian law being what it is and the regulations and ministerial and other instruments being what they are, I'll be able to get onto a bridging visa. Does that present a degree of attraction? I suspect it would. There's some evidence to suggest that that's the case. The rate of increase, which Senator Keneally also read out earlier, I don't know that you were here, basically tracking the same annual figures, does show the increase both in annual as well as daily rates. I was at pains, as was Mr Outram, to try to scale it for you. Over that same time period, we've had 40 million arrivals. The effort taken to reduce that number to an increasingly, vanishingly small fraction of a percent, it's currently running at about 0.23% at the moment, would have to be traded off against the diversion of resources that you would have to undertake in order to try to get that number lower. There are things that you could do.
And I accept that. I accept
no, indeed.
You mentioned that earlier on. My concern is, though, by going away from the data, we have made a mess of the Murray Darling Basin. We've made a mess of energy in this country. And if we go away from the data here, we could make a mess of immigration. The government's already cleaned up a mess, and we commend it for that. So my point is, 2015 was not long after the government came in and really put the teeth into stopping the boats, right? And then I'm thinking there's an alternative now, and that's air travel, and they're doing whatever they can to get in that way. Is this just the start, the thin end of the wedge, or is it something that we can ignore?
It's cyclical. We're very data-driven, Senator, you'd be pleased to know, and we go off the data. It is cyclical. It does come and go. I've never seen, either in my former role as Head of Customs and Border Protection and now here, an exact displacement effect. That is to say, persons who tried to come by boat, 100% of whom came without documentation.
I'm not implying that. If it becomes difficult in one way,
correct,
when it was easy, then they're going to put their attention somewhere else, and that's my concern.
I was going to say, both the clients, if I can use that term, the clients of smugglers are very different. The cohort is very different. The demography is different. The geographical points of origin are very different. That's point one. And point two, without going into highly sensitive intelligence-related matters, and if Commissioner Outram or Deputy Commissioner Newton want to add to this, I'd be delighted if they wanted to join. There's not been a displacement effect either in the cartels or the syndicates either. In other words, those who were our principal adversaries through the period 2008-2013, which was the spike in maritime arrivals, have tended to go into other lines of business. Now some, and I need to be very cautious about what I say about highly sensitive intelligence that is available to us, some have a look at trying to come in by air, but frankly they can make more money waiting out our maritime border successes and doing other things, be it prostitution, drugs, other matters through Southeast Asia, South Asia, and extending into Africa and elsewhere. The level of syndication, the smugglers, that's apparent in this stream, let's call it the air stream. I don't think that they're equivalent streams. Others tend to make that claim, tend not to have that level of syndication. This is people who hear that we've got, some people would say generous, certainly ample rule of law provisions. As long as you can get on the tarmac, as long as you can get into the country, there are processes by which you can hook yourself to both merits review and or judicial review. In a sense, good luck to them, if I can use that turn of phrase. We don't see the highly orchestrated syndication that you saw in that peak period on the maritime side, 2008, 2013. Now, is that an absolute separation? No, there is some overlap. Some of our adversaries have said, I wonder, and again, I'm just going to be very general here and I'm not going to go to either time or place. I wonder, having made a lot of money out of boats, how easy it would be to get the visas, get the passports, to penetrate Australia's airline liaison officers and all the other measures that have been described to you through the course of the day. They tend to give up. It's a hard nut to crack. Our case theory, our hypothesis about the airstream is that it's opportunistic, it's word of mouth. People say, put in a valid visa, whether it's to attend for a learning experience, visitor experience, tourism experience. We have 40 million arrivals over that time period that we've been talking about. Claim protection. You'll almost certainly be knocked back by the department because it won't be a well-founded fear of persecution, and Mr Mansfield can speak to the rejection rates, but you might have an opportunity if you wait it out through the AAT and the federal court.
So the people who try to smuggle people into this country are really, in large part, criminals who will attach to any racket they can.
Largely, I was making a reference earlier to the displacement between maritime smuggling and other criminal activity. There's not much margin on the air side.
Yeah.
You don't have the upfront because it's illicit on the maritime side. Evidence that's been given to this committee over 10 years, which I know all too well because I've been coming here for 10 years. Says that the margin at its peak period, when we did lose control of our borders, I said earlier to you, or perhaps it was to Senator Chandler, I've seen a border crisis, this is not a border crisis. The margins on an illicit commodity, that is to say access to Australia, was at its peak running at about $5,000 US per individual, for a family 25, 30,000 depending on the kind of rates. Commissioner Outram, I should refer to you as well as my colleague in this. We don't see those sort of markups in this game. The chances of being bounced either in the visa application stage, at the airport, denied uplift by the airline, denied entry at the primary line, the immigration line, the quarantine line, is just too high. So the margins aren't what those organised criminals tend to pursue. Now, is it the case that there is some evidence of labour hire intermediaries and others seeking to get people into Australia to put them into nail salons, farms and the like? There is some evidence of that. It's not the same criminals. And when, Mr Outram, I don't think you were here when I was referring to Task Force Scadina, when the Border Force does its sweeps with other agencies, we tend not to come across, although we do come across some, persons who need to be referred. I know you said that it was of incidental interest to you or non-interest. We do come across some persons who need to be treated under human trafficking, slavery or labour servitude arrangements, but it's not in the tens of thousands. No. It's a handful of cases, Mr Outram.
It's a very small proportion.
Have you had to detain any, this is my last question, Chair, have you had to detain any people, and if so, what proportion have absconded, if any?
Sorry, detained at which stage?
After they arrive in the country and you find out they're illegal, have you detained them?
This has to be your last question, Senator Roberts.
Ms Golightly, they tend to be bridged unless there are security or character concerns.
Exactly, Secretary. What most people, the way the law operates is that when somebody applies for a visa, including a protection visa, they are given what's called a bridging visa, and that makes them lawful. So we still know, who they are, what they're doing, and they have that bridging visa until their claim is decided and it's either granted or refused. If it's refused, they can avail themselves of appeal rights through the AAT in the courts, as the Secretary was just outlining, in which case they would also be given a bridging visa to continue to make them lawful in the country. So by and large, most people are lawful. There's a small number who their application might be refused and they don't avail themselves of the appeal process, then they're expected to leave the country.
With that, I'm sorry to have to cut you